There are stories about Jesus' life that have been hidden for centuries, stories that might give us a fuller picture of who he was and what he taught. Some believe that the Vatican has kept secrets about Jesus, leaving out certain teachings and events from the Bible that could change how we see him. Today, we'll look into this banned knowledge and explore what these hidden stories tell us about Jesus, his message, and why they might have been kept out of sight. The Bible tells us a little about Jesus' birth and childhood, and then skips ahead to his adult years when he began teaching. But there's almost nothing about the time in between, his teenage years and young adulthood. Some believe that these missing years hold key information about his journey and teachings. One idea is that Jesus may have traveled to other countries during this time, learning from spiritual teachers far from home. Some say he might have studied in Egypt, India, or even Persia, where he could have learned ideas about kindness, inner peace, and a personal connection with God. These teachings are also found in Eastern spiritual traditions, and they could have influenced Jesus' message. This theory challenges the idea that Jesus' teachings were only based on the traditions he grew up with. If he learned from other cultures, it could explain why he spoke about love, forgiveness, and the kingdom of God within each person. These ideas are often connected with different spiritual paths beyond the ones we usually hear about in the Bible. Another idea is that Jesus may have spent time with a group called the Essenes, who were known for their focus on personal purity, meditation, and a close relationship with God. The Essenes didn't believe in simply following religious rules, they valued inner spirituality, a theme that appears in many of Jesus' teachings. There are also books, sometimes called Lost Gospels, that give a different view of Jesus' teachings. One of these is the Gospel of Thomas, where Jesus talks about finding the light within yourself. In this book, Jesus teaches that each person can connect directly with God by looking within, without needing a church or religious rituals. For example, one of the sayings in the Gospel of Thomas is, "The kingdom of God is inside you, and it is outside of you." This idea of God's presence within each person is powerful. It suggests that we all have access to divine wisdom, without needing permission from religious leaders. This idea might have been seen as a threat to the early church. If people believed they could connect directly with God, they might not feel the need to follow strict religious rules. It could shift power away from religious authorities and make people feel more independent in their faith. Another interesting aspect of these hidden stories is Jesus' relationship with Mary Magdalene. Many know her as a follower of Jesus, but some of these lost texts describe her as one of his closest companions. According to these sources, Mary understood Jesus' teachings deeply and was even seen as a leader in her own right. In these accounts, Mary isn't just a follower but a trusted friend who may have had her own insights to share. The traditional Bible doesn't give her this role, but the hidden texts suggest she had a significant influence on his teachings. It's possible that these stories were left out to keep the focus on male leaders in the early church. By downplaying Mary's role, the church could have reinforced the idea of a male-led hierarchy, where women's roles were limited. Seeing Mary as a close companion of Jesus adds a different layer to his message. It suggests that Jesus valued everyone's insights, regardless of their background or gender, and that his teachings might be more inclusive than we've been told. There's also the mystery of why we don't have any writings from Jesus himself. The Gospels we have today were written by his followers, not by Jesus directly. Some wonder if Jesus did write things down, but that these writings were hidden or destroyed. If they existed, they might have contained messages that would have expanded our understanding of his teachings. If any writings by Jesus were left out, they could hold messages encouraging individual spirituality, love, and kindness. This would align with the idea that Jesus focused more on personal faith than on institutional power. Ultimately, these hidden stories offer a different view of Jesus, a teacher who encouraged a direct, personal connection with God and who valued love and kindness over rules and rituals. If these teachings had been included, they might have given us a more personal, open approach to faith. Over the years, many books about Jesus' life and teachings were left out of the Bible, such as the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, and the Gospel of Philip. These lost books offer alternative perspectives on his teachings. In these books, Jesus speaks about knowing ourselves, finding inner peace, and connecting directly with God. This personal, self-guided spirituality may have worried early church leaders who preferred followers to rely on the church for guidance. The Gospel of Mary, for instance, presents Mary Magdalene as a key figure who truly understood Jesus' teachings. Her role as a close confidant could challenge traditional views of church authority and hierarchy. Leaving these texts out raises questions about whether parts of Jesus' message that focused on individual connection with God were intentionally excluded. Exploring these lost texts can offer us a fuller picture of Jesus as a teacher of personal strength and inner wisdom, which we don't fully see in the Bible as we know it. One of the most mysterious parts of Jesus' life is the lost years, the time between his childhood and his adult ministry. Some theories suggest that Jesus traveled and learned from spiritual teachers around the world. If Jesus learned from traditions in Egypt, Persia, or India, his teachings on love, kindness, and finding peace within could have been shaped by these experiences. This makes sense when we look at his emphasis on inner calm and compassion for others. Some people point to the similarities between Jesus' teachings and Eastern spiritual ideas, which focus on connecting with the divine within. These theories suggest that he might have learned these concepts directly from spiritual teachers during his travels. If the Vatican knows more about these years and chose to keep it hidden, it might be to maintain a more specific image of Jesus, rooted solely in Jewish and early Christian teachings. Uncovering these years would show us that Jesus may have had a wider spiritual background, making his message more universal. A powerful theme in the hidden teachings of Jesus is the idea of inner strength and connecting with God from within. According to some of these lesser-known texts, Jesus believed that each person has a piece of the divine within themselves. This means that finding peace, strength, and wisdom starts from within, rather than relying on outside rituals or rules. In these texts, Jesus often spoke about the importance of love, forgiveness, and kindness, not just as actions, but as qualities that strengthen our connection with God. Instead of focusing on strict religious laws, he encouraged people to be kind, compassionate, and understanding. He taught that these qualities help us connect with God and create a more meaningful life. One of the most interesting ideas in these teachings is that we can feel closer to God by looking inward and practicing self-reflection. By understanding our thoughts, emotions, and intentions, we gain a sense of peace and purpose that comes from within. This approach puts less emphasis on following external religious rules and more on finding a personal relationship with God. Some of these hidden teachings suggest that Jesus wanted people to find their own path to spirituality, rather than just following instructions from religious leaders. He encouraged people to think for themselves, to look within, and to trust that God was already there. This perspective on inner power was empowering, allowing each person to feel connected to God on their own terms. This approach to spirituality might have been challenging for the early church, which preferred people to follow structured rules and rituals. By promoting personal connection with God and inner power, Jesus' message could have inspired people to look for their own answers, which might be why some of these ideas were left out or downplayed over time. Mary Magdalene is one of the most interesting figures in Jesus' life, yet her role has often been simplified or misunderstood. In the traditional Bible, Mary is mostly shown as a follower of Jesus, but some hidden texts reveal a different story. These writings suggest she was much more than just a follower. She may have been one of Jesus' closest companions and even a spiritual leader in her own right. In texts like the Gospel of Mary, Mary Magdalene is portrayed as someone with deep insight into Jesus' teachings. Some believe she might have understood his message in ways that even the male disciples didn't. This unique relationship challenges the traditional image of her as simply a background figure and instead paints her as a partner in Jesus' mission. So, why was her role downplayed? Many scholars think it's because the early church wanted to focus on male leaders and create a male-centered hierarchy. By reducing Mary's role, the church could place more emphasis on the male apostles and keep religious leadership as something for men only. If Mary Magdalene's influence had been highlighted, it could have inspired other women to take on spiritual leadership roles. Instead, she was mostly renowned as a sinner who was saved by Jesus. This limited view might have made it harder for people to see her as a leader. This different view of Mary Magdalene suggests that Jesus' message could have included more equality and respect for everyone, regardless of gender. Seeing her as a central figure adds depth to Jesus' teachings, showing a more inclusive and balanced view of spirituality. In 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea played a huge role in shaping Christianity as we know it. This gathering of early church leaders was called by Emperor Constantine, and it was here that many decisions were made about which stories and teachings would be included in the Bible. These leaders decided which Gospels would be considered official and which would be left out. At the council, the leaders chose a version of Jesus' life and teachings that they felt would create unity and structure within the church. But this meant leaving out some texts that didn't fit the church's chosen message. Books that emphasized a personal connection to God or encouraged individual thinking were often the ones left out. The Gospels that were excluded, like the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary, often contain messages that encourage self-reflection and personal growth, which may have been seen as too independent from the church's authority. These teachings suggest a spiritual path that's personal, where each person connects with God in their own way. By choosing certain texts and leaving others out, the church could create a more standardized view of Jesus' life and teachings. This made it easier for leaders to guide people within a common structure, but it also meant that certain ideas about Jesus and his teachings were hidden or lost. The decisions made at the Council of Nicaea remind us that the Bible we have today is just one version of Jesus' story, shaped by choices made centuries ago. Exploring these hidden texts allows us to see a fuller picture of his message, one that might have been more personal and empowering. So, what do these hidden teachings mean for us now? Discovering these alternative views of Jesus' life and message can offer us a fresh perspective on spirituality. Rather than focusing only on following set rules, these teachings invite us to explore our own connection with God and our inner selves. One of the most powerful messages in these hidden texts is the idea that each person can connect with the divine directly. Instead of relying on rituals or authorities to feel close to God, we're encouraged to find a connection within ourselves through kindness, compassion, and understanding. Another key takeaway is the focus on love and respect for others. Many of these hidden teachings emphasize seeing the divine in everyone and treating all people with care and empathy. This approach can help us build more compassionate relationships and create a more peaceful world. For people who might feel distanced from traditional religion, these teachings provide a path to spirituality that's flexible and personal. They suggest that true faith isn't about rigid practices, but about understanding yourself and finding a connection with the divine in your own way. In the end, these hidden teachings show us that spirituality can be a journey we each take, guided by values like love, compassion, and self-awareness. By connecting with these ideas, we can find meaning and purpose that feel right for us. Connecting with these hidden teachings in our lives today is easier than ever. Many of these lost texts, like the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary, are now available for anyone to read. Exploring them can open up new ways of thinking about Jesus' teachings and our own spiritual path. One way to start is by focusing on qualities like kindness, patience, and self-awareness in our daily lives. These qualities are at the heart of Jesus' hidden teachings, and practicing them helps us feel closer to his message of love and compassion. Meditation and quiet reflection are also helpful tools. Spending a few minutes each day in stillness can help us tap into our inner wisdom, connecting us with our own spiritual insights. This practice allows us to look within, where, as these hidden texts suggest, the presence of God can be found. For those who are part of organized religions, exploring these teachings doesn't mean leaving behind your faith. Instead, it can deepen your understanding and help you find new ways to experience God's presence in everyday life. Whether through reading, meditation, or simply practicing kindness, connecting with these hidden teachings can inspire us to live with more purpose, compassion, and personal connection to the divine. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the hidden stories and teachings about Jesus' life. These teachings invite us to look deeper, to explore a more personal and meaningful connection with God. If you found this video insightful, please consider liking and subscribing for more discussions about spirituality, history, and life's mysteries. Let's continue seeking answers that help us grow and understand ourselves and the world better.